Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Peterson. I'm going to be presenting today on Marx Weber and his religious ideology and economic change. So, a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. There's going to be a quick biography, influences, his important works, his key terms, his conclusions, and some critiques. So he was born April 21st, 1864 in Erfurt, Prussian, Germany. He died June 14th, 1920 in Munich, Germany. His family influences in his study. His father was an inspiring liberal politician, joined a more compliant pro-Bismarckian national liberals later on. So he moved his family from Erfurt to Berlin and established himself as a fixture of Berlin's social milieu and entertained prominent politicians and scholars in the Weber household. And his mother was raised more in Calvinistic orthodoxy. She later on went to gradually accept more of a tolerant theology, but her Puritan morality never really diminished. His education, so he studied at the University of Hellenberg in 1882, but his studies were interrupted and he joined the military. And after his release from the military, he finished his studies at the University of Berlin. So family influence continued. So his father took on a very traditional authoritarian manner in the home. So he was very expectant of his wife and his children to be totally obedient to him and to follow his orders. This caused his mother to become very distant, especially after her husband's disdain for her grieving period for Weber's two siblings who had passed away. He also, his activities on the town, she didn't agree with, so she just didn't go out with him. And it's said that this difference between his parents' beliefs and actions is said to have contributed to his inner turmoil and search for answers and what this definition of power is. Why is it occurring? So his key influencers were Karl Marx and Friedrich Nietzsche, and they were theorists that influenced him. What he really did was recognize capitalistic industrialization as a dominant feature, like Marx, but he did have some disagreements. So, what he mainly did was compared the history between Western and Eastern religions and history and social work, theoretical work, and empirical cases. So, literature was his main focus of studying. It wasn't more on music or art or ruins. It was mostly a little literature focus for him. And at the end of his study, he was considered a German sociologist, and he was considering himself as a scientist. So, important works that we see by him. We see The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, which was published in 1904 through 1905. This is a studies the relationship between self-discipline and Protestantism and the emergence of modern capitalism. So he was just his viewpoint throughout this whole work was the relationship between the Protestant worth ethic and the emergence of modern capitalism. And in that piece, he goes to say that capitalism and the economy rose because of the Protestant worth ethic and vice versa. When the capitalism and economy started to grow, so did the worth ethic of the Protestants. And then we have Economy and Society in 1922, which was an unpublished work before his death, but then his wife later on went up to publish it for him. So this is a foundational text for social sciences to understand the relationship between the individual action, the social action, and economic institutions. So in this work, he's just studying different relationships and what they affect and finding key links between all of them. And then in 1923, we see a published work of his, The General Economic History. So he examines the world economic history up to capitalism and begins with the agricultural village and then moves to the manufacturing and mining and the structural and ideological foundations of modern capitalism. So basically in the beginning, he's we see the agriculture village, but then that was like our main source of income. But now we are moving to manufacturing and mining, and like why this is affecting capitalism. Like, what are the links here? So here we see key definitions of him. And like we're going to look at the first set is like key definitions and the types of social interaction. So we see traditional action, which is justified as a repetition of the past. So like he's like, yes, history repeats itself, but this is a justified action to keep repeating. And then we see effective action, which is geared toward the expression of emotion. So it's like, well, I'm angered, so I'm acting out like this, or like I'm sad, so I'm going to act like this. Just how like emotions affect people's actions. And then there's value oriented action. So it's what he defines it as in which a performance is taken as an end in itself. So it's like, well, I value this, so I must do this. Or it's like, I value this, so I cannot do that. And then there's like instrumental action, which means ends rationality, in which actors pursue their economic or other interests. It's like, well, I'm kind of curious of what this is, and it interests me, so I'm going to pursue it. And when he tries to use these to define a specific action, like any specific action might involve one or more of these rationales. So we see, like, for example, it's like, well, I don't know why this action happened. Well, we could use the definition of value-oriented action and effective action, which are both definitions can be used to describe a certain event. So here we have key definitions of power by him. So power is the ability to exert and control over people, but Weber like didn't just like use it as like a physical power or like a singular person. He described it more as authority, like the authority someone has. So he believed that there was traditional authority, which is rooted in beliefs and practices that have come to seem as part of a natural order. It's like, well, this person has come to power and has authority because it's always been like this. So like we would see that in more of like a monarchy setting, I guess would be a good way to put it. It's like, well, the king died, so his son gets it. So it just keeps going down. Like whether the people like that person or not, he'll become into power because of tradition. Then we see charismatic authority. It rests solely on the perceived personal qualities of individual leaders and the receptivity of followers. So we would see this more in like our government where we have a president. It's like, oh, well, we like his values. He promised this. He's so kind, da, 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 da. So then he gets receptive followers and they're like, yes, I want to vote for him. I want him in office. And then we see rational and legal authority. And this derives from explicit laws or rules and is invested in officers or positions. So we say like, well, it's the law, so we have to follow it. I don't completely understand. You might not completely understand the law or why it's there, but it's the rules, so you have to follow that authority. And would be put into like, it would be enforced by like police officers or like court official, like if you go to court, like it's like you broke this law, here we are to enforce your punishment, things like that. So now we're going to get into Weber's conclusions. So one of his conclusions is that religion, which is based on cultural needs, and has added new dimensions to human life and human development. So like in this, he's saying it's like religion might not just be because of something's out there. He's like, religion occurs because the people need it and the people want it, and it adds more to them and it gives them their values and beliefs. And then another conclusion he's come to is that the Protestant institution and its ethics have played an important role in the development of economy. So in this we see it's like because of the Protestant's worth ethic is building, we see the economy building. And this can be vice versa too. The economy is building, so the Protestant worth ethic is building. So now we're going to get into some critiques of Weber's work. One broad critique that everyone seems to have is that he ignores material forces and argues that capitalism's roots are merely a product of Protestants' ethics. The biggest thing we see here is that he's not looking for other links. He's simply focusing on this one link, and there's not a ton of material supporting his argument. So that's why he runs into a lot of critiques on that. It's like he's really only focusing on one thing and not anything else that's going around it. And he only focused on the aspect of capitalism growth. He's not looking at other things that are growing, like different cultures, different religions. He's simply focusing on capitalism growth. All right, that's all I got for you. Thank you. Have a good day.